Good morning, Shyam. Welcome to the study circle. And let's start. So, before we begin, just taking 1 minute to just come to the present. We can do this by focusing on the breath, because that's really helpful. Following the breath all the way in and all the way out. Relaxing into the breath for a minute. Relaxing the muscles of my face, shoulders, and feeling the joy that a conscious breath gives us. So invoking the divine's presence to help us see more or get something that can further help us to live simply in and with the life.
Namaskar.
Namaste. So as we know that we are now doing a book study, and the book is a compilation by S Dalal, and the book is Looking from Within, or Look from Within. Yeah. So last week we had done, we started with the introduction. So it basically defined the definition, it basically defined what an attitude is. That's what I remember. Please add if missing something. So basically it said that how, compared to animals, human beings can control their attitude. And attitude is not just a mental thing, which is usually considered. And basically, it said in psychological jargon, an attitude has cognitive, affective, and cognitive components. So, how I think, what I think, how I feel, how there's this willing components, the cognitive. So that all defines an attitude. So, therefore, a change in one's attitude towards a thing, person, circumstance, or event implies change in the way one thinks, feels, and is disposed to act in relation to a thing, person, circumstance, or event. I don't think there would be anybody here or in general, who has not suddenly seen a shift in their attitude. Say you are something happened, you think something about some person, and you come to know of something that that person has gone through, or like something that has the capacity to change your attitude, and you're like, oh my god, I thought he was this, she was this. So how do these pieces of information they change my view? I find that very interesting, especially with anger. I found it very interesting. I'd heard it, once in my kids' school, there was a Buddhist monk who had come to give a talk, and he had said that, if anger, when it's there, and Jagan, we were talking about it yesterday, that when it's there, it it just overpowers, right? It just feels that, oh my god, I can do anything in this rage. If it's directed to a person, it's like, I cannot stand that person right now, right? And yet the monk said that, where does it go away? If it's if it's the truth, if it's that big that I am right now ready to break something, how does it cool down? If it had truth in it, right, then it would not have been momentary. So knowing, seeing, experiencing thousands of times that it's momentary, we know that it's not the truth, right? Because one definition of truth is that something that never changes, right? It doesn't changes from person to person, situation to situation, time to time. It's forever present. So it was very interesting. So it basically, that's what we had. That's the summary that I can give or recall. I don't recall much about how it was defining the attitude. Yeah, hi Aditi, long time. Good to see you.
Hi, Taru.
So now we'll take up the next paragraph if we are ready, and if, of course, there's any reflections on last time, anything that we, I don't know, want to discuss, we can do that. Otherwise, if anybody is ready, they can unmute and read.
Yes. The psychology of yoga throws further light on the nature of attitudes. Unlike modern psychology, which lumps all psychological functions into what is called mind, the psychology of yoga looks upon man's subjective nature as a composite of distinct, through intermixed and interacting parts of the being, each with its own characteristic consciousness. This yoga, this yoga concept of parts of the being is extremely helpful in understanding attitudes because different attitudes are related to different parts of the being and their different types of consciousness. One's predominant attitudes depends on the part of the being which is dominant in one's nature. Ma'am, should I finish the whole paragraph?
Yeah, please do that. Yeah, we can finish the whole
Sure,
paragraph.
sure. Broadly speaking, there are two divisions in the human being: the outer being, which constitutes the personality, from the Latin word, from the Latin persona, mask, and the inner being, the true being, or the person who uses the outer mask of the personality. The outer being is only an instrument as a means of expression. It is not one's real self. However, ordinarily we are identified with the outer being and regard it as our self. Therefore, it is the outer being that usually expresses itself in our attitudes and actions. Ma'am, if you don't mind, there was one sentence above. Can I reread it?
Yes, please.
A little bit. Okay. Okay. Unlike modern psychology, which lumps all psychological functions into what is called mind, the psychology of yoga looks upon man's subjective nature as a composite of distinct, through intermixed and interacting parts of the being, each with its own characteristic consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we're talking about, regular psychology and the psychology of yoga. So here it says that the psychology of yoga throws further light on the nature of attitudes. Attitude was what we were discussing. So unlike modern psychology, how we just say, okay, it's the mind. Everything is the mind. We are judging the mind. We are categorizing the mind. We are giving different diseases, different syndromes and all. Okay, mind is this. Everything is just on the mind. So it says that unlike that, the yoga looks upon man's subjective. Subjective means which depends on person to person, right? It matters, like your feelings, your thoughts, upon man's subjective nature as a composite. Composite again means, coming together, a mix of things of distinct, though intermixed and interacting parts of the being. So it's not just the mind that it's taking something, right? Deciding something for us that's giving us an attitude. There are a lot of things that come together which are distinct, yet they interact with each other, each with its own characteristic consciousness. Consciousness again here is very is a I think it's a big word, because whatever we are made up of, that thing carries some energy in us. Today Jagan and I, we were talking for a little while, and we were talking about how, how difficult it is to get over our patterns, our beliefs, especially the things that we have been doing for some time, because there's something in me which just clings. I have a very sticky nature in general. I keep clinging. So from that regard, it's like, because how we say that we are born from the stones, right? The stones, then they turned into plants, then they turned into insects, those, that kind of a thing. So that jadta, that the word that we use in Hindi, the inconscient in me, it has its own consciousness. Vital has its own consciousness. The soul has its own, the psychic consciousness. So, because there are so many things in me, and I think we were discussing it last time too, how, we are not one, we are many. All those have effect in us. So, this is what we just read right now, that it's not just the mind, although we think it is. That's what the modern science is. But we are actually a mixture of so much, each with its own consciousness. It's like, I think again we were discussing this example. It's my favorite, where I believe that the one who goes to sleep at night, if I'm talking about myself, thinking that, I'll get up at this time and then I'll do this and then I'll do that, and thinking all those things that need to be done. And the one who wakes up to that alarm in which I'm supposed to get up, I believe they're two different people, right? Because that person, the one who goes to sleep, has a different story. The one who has to wake up has a different story. And that can be very confusing, right? But now that when we know that there are different factors, different forces, both internal and exterior, acting in me, through me, then one knows, right? One can reject, one can accept, one doesn't have to get totally jumbled into a ho kya raha hai type, what is happening. So I feel it's really nice that they have covered this in the introduction only, because these concepts usually come a bit later. But it's so nice to have this. Yeah, anything before we go on further?
Ma'am, through the meeting, maybe I'm guessing if I listen further, maybe I'll understand, because that one sentence where it says, you know, uh, unlike modern psychology, which combines everything into mind, the psychology of yoga looks upon man's subjective nature as a composite of distinct through intermix and interacting parts of the being. So that particular sentence, that is something I'm like still a little bit confused, but I'll listen to the next thing and maybe I'm hoping it'll answer me.
Yeah, Jagan, although, what we just discussed It's tell me what are you finding confusing about it? You can read it again and tell me which part are you
Sure.
confused about?
Yes. So the psychology of yoga looks upon man's subjective nature as a composite of distinct through intermix and interacting parts of the being, each with its own characteristic consciousness.
Hmm.
So my understanding here is that the psychology of yoga, how it is different, is that it is considering. Um,
देखो जैसे गुस्से की बात करें, right? We were talking about anger, right? There's
yeah,
something in you which when you are about to get angry, it says that uh, stop, right? It says there's something which wants to hold back. That's probably, I think, maybe it's our, mental aspect. And yet there is a vital in me, right? Which says
right.
ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया, ऐसे कैसे कर दिया, ये तो बिल्कुल unacceptable है, right? So there's a different part of you which simultaneously is taking the lead,
Yes.
right? So that's what it's talking about. There's a physical aspect which might say कि मैं बताऊंगा इसको. Again, I don't know, how. So what it's saying is that in modern science, we just clump everything that, okay, the mind is doing all this. But when we read yoga, this integral yoga, how it's told that there are different parts living in me which are interconnected. Mind is connected to the vital, right? Mind can see the
Mhm.
vital is ready to explode. And the vital
Yes.
can see probably that the mind doesn't want to. And yet, whoever wins, wins, right? So that's
Yes.
what it's saying. At any given point, different parts. And then, there are several other texts on hidden forces. One thing is that my own parts are manipulating and, somebody is ruling, somebody is not ruling. It's a possibility that in the same situation, depending on my state of mind or how I'm feeling emotionally, I might react. And in other part time, I might not at all get triggered, right? A lot depends on what I'm going through.
Yes.
So just that, I am not a strict, just limited line, right? कि ऐसे ही खींचेगी. I'm a living being. I can give different reactions, different actions. The same thing my best friend says to me, I might laugh it off. If a stranger says to me, I would maybe get angry, right? Or vice versa. Why does it happen when the stimulus is the same? Why do I pick it up differently? अगर खाली mind की बात होती है ना? So it's just saying that, it's just giving that introduction that a lot of components, both inside me, right now they're talking about inside, and after that, it's also outer forces which act through me, which I can be aware. If I know they exist, I can see them better and maybe better master them.
So when it says that, different parts of the body has different minds which are interconnected. So what are the other parts of the body that are, triggered by an event as such?
हाँ, तो अभी इसके बाद में जो वो बताएंगे ना, दे आर टेलिंग अस डिफरेंट components of that how we are
Right.
made of the outer being, the inner being, that they'll just talk about. Okay. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Anybody, any comments, any questions?
Yeah, Taru, since I joined late, can you just tell me in one line what just covered?
Yeah. So, Ritu, basically, how last time, if you remember, we were talking about attitude. That attitude is not just mental, it's our thinking, it's our feeling, it's our, willing component. So we just started with this next thing, that how, this is what we were just reading, that in modern psychology, everything is clumped under my mind. Ki mind is the deciding factor. But here they are saying that there are different factors, forces, components within me and out. Abhi, right now, let's concentrate on within me that affect. how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking. So that decide my attitude. It's just not a mental domain.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's telling us this because हमें लगता है कि हमें समझ आ गया तो हम कर
Hmm.
लेंगे, है ना? मतलब now that I have understood that this is not
Mm-hmm.
good, this is good, I can just do it, right? But that doesn't happen because it's not just about understanding, it's not just about mental, it's about, है ना, again feelings, vital, जो patterns चल रही हैं, है ना? Physical has its own life, its own running and all. वो आदत, जैसे how they talk about कि how when we react to something some way, the neural pathways gets created, है तो machine कि अगर ऐसा एक्शन है तो ये रिएक्ट करना है, ऐसा एक्शन है तो ये रिएक्ट करना है, तो नेक्स्ट टाइम व्हेन द स्टिमुलस कम्स आई डोंट इवन आस्क, द ब्रेन डजंट इवन आस्क मी कि कैसे रिएक्ट करना है, वो सीधा वैसे ही रिएक्ट कर देता है जैसे मैंने पहले एक या दो बार ही करा है, एंड देन दैट पैटर्न बिकम्स अ पैटर्न फॉर लाइफ till I look at it, change it, or something happens for me to change it. That pathway gets created that this action, this dialogue, this person will generate this response in me.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you.
मतलब हम लोगों की जैसे वी से मैं मेरा दिमाग मेरी फीलिंग, बट हाउ मैकेनिकल वी आर, इट्स प्रिटी
Mm-hmm.
अमेजिंग. आई फाइंड इट वेरी इंट्रीगिंग. Jagan, you don't have to look so serious. It's all.
No, the voice is low in my headphones, so
Acha,
I'm
voice is
kind of trying to
otherwise, is it
focus.
clear
Yeah.
for everybody or is it less today?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
all
ऐसा
okay,
नहीं
Talu. Perfectly okay.
okay.
Talu, can you go back
Okay,
to the
I'll disconnect and rejoin.
ठीक
Sorry,
है.
sorry, Sam.
Yeah. Yeah, Shyam,
yeah,
please tell me, what did you
yeah,
say?
can you please go back to that script?
Yeah. Now, where do you want me to go? Further up or
Yeah,
just here?
well, नीचे यहाँ पे. Broadly speaking, yeah, here, yeah. Yeah, broadly speaking, there are two divisions in the human being: the outer being, which constitutes the personality, and the inner being, the true being. Okay. So, Taru, at a very personal, what you call, taking a look at myself, many a times I do indulge in pretended formalities and gestures, and which I won't ever like to indulge. So, how do I bring my inner being in sync with the outer being?
Yeah, Shyam, that's an excellent question. And this is what it will tell us. This text is
And I
made
do
for
feel,
this. Yeah, that we can
and I do
change our
feel
attitude.
Yeah, and I do feel out of way when I indulge in all those pretended formalities and gestures and everything.
एक सिंपली बोलने में एक यही दिखता है कि सी वंस वी नो समथिंग इज नॉट सर्विंग मी, राइट, then we can just it slowly gets dropped by its own. The most important thing is to see, what am I doing, why am I doing this, why do I need to pretend? And a lot of times when we are in company of people who have
Mhm.
already left all that, that also really encourages us, because the other way of life is much simpler, much honest, right? But to even recognize these pretenses, it's something like, congratulations to me that now that I can see how foolish I feel I need to be. And once you give it up, ऐसा लगता, हंसी आती है फिर खुद पे कि अच्छा कभी ये भी किया करते थे, you know just today, I had to go and get something from the grocery store, and as soon as I came out, I had to catch a bus. And there are two buses, how one goes in that and the same number is there. And I was a bit absent-minded and I just saw the bus and I was like, oh my God, nikal na jaye, fir half an hour wait karna padega. I ran and I just jumped in. And somehow it went to a stop which I didn't recognize. So when it stopped, I went up to the driver and I said that, could you please tell me whether it's going to, say Oakville Go or the other place, right? Which direction? So he just looked at me and he said, and usually they are very polite, very sweet, loving. And he said that, did you not read it before getting it on? I said, actually, I was in a hurry and I saw the bus and I jumped and I'm sorry, but could you tell me? He said, oh, then he told me. But it was like he could have just said that, right? That, okay, this is where it's heading. And he was quite rude in that context. And I was just, when I came back to my seat, I was in the right bus, in case you are wondering. I started laughing because I could see that earlier, sometime back and all, these rude comments would affect me, right? I would take it personally and I would like, oh my God, I should be more careful. I should be more conscious. How do I behave? I would take it on me. And right now, when he said it, I felt that, oh my God, किसी से लड़ाई करके आ रहा होगा. I hope he feels better soon. You know how it's not about me, how somebody else is reacting, speaking. Uske liye, I think, again, I have to be with me, right? I have to have certain assurance, certain love for myself so that my feelings, my set, or I don't know, this thing is not sitting outside, right? बिकने के लिए खड़ी नहीं है कि आप बोलो और मैं छोड़ दूं अपनी जो एक basic, you know what I'm talking about, the centeredness. So I was laughing at myself when I came that this thing could have triggered a bad mood for me. And right now, all I could do was maybe, say a small prayer that, Mother, please, he seems to be in a horrible mood. I hope he feels better. So just a small example because it was fresh off the oven that these things come and then we can laugh at it and move on.
Yeah, Taru, that part I'm able to, what you call, not conquer, but slightly I'm able to do better on that plane. Because whenever people abuse me or whenever people act lousily, I do pray for them and I do intend that something good may happen to this person and all those things. But on the second line, that whenever people, that all those pretended formalities and gestures about which I was talking, that whenever that I do indulge in lot of pretended formalities that किसी ने अगर बुलाई और नहीं जाने का दिल है तो फिर भी जाना पड़ता है and all those things. And I do feel that I am carrying a baggage unnecessarily, indulging in unnecessarily stuff and all those things.
Yeah.
And I do want that how my inner being, that being with myself and acting on my own sincerity and purity, I do want to act on it and I desperately want to act on it. But somewhere I get caught in the wave and in the crest and trough of all those things.
Yeah.
So how do I get rid of it? Or
Yeah, Shyam, I think ये ना खुद ही एक स्टेट आ जाती है वैसे, है ना? मतलब now that you are seeing how petty it is and how you don't need to be there will be a time when you will be in a party or you will be in one of those things and you'll be like, I cannot bear to stay here one more minute. That could be one of the ways. We all have our journeys, right? Or you could just take up a stand because mentally now you understand. But in other ways, you can still take it. There's something in you which feels that नहीं इतना तो करना ही है. You can sit and have the discussion, right? कि क्यों करना है? हमको इतना कुछ हमने सीखा होता है ना, we have to unlearn all those things. You can sit and have a dialogue with yourself. I can do this with you, if you want to give it more attention. Of course, that ways, when it can either it will happen naturally that like I said, that one day you'll be like, it's an impossibility for me. I cannot even consider it. And the more attention you give it, both like say asking for help and giving it more mental space, questioning yourself, telling yourself that no, you don't have to. बिकॉज एक बच्चे को एक कभी कुछ सिखाया होता है तो उसको वापस से कुछ और करने के लिए वी हैव टू हैव दैट डायलॉग, राइट? दैट देयर इज नथिंग टू बी स्केर्ड ऑफ, देयर इज नथिंग टू फियर. बिकॉज लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट वी है इतना तो करना ही है, इतना तो बनता ही है, those are baseless. They don't mean any.
yeah, like people or things, I have brought about a certain element of detachment in myself. But all this pretended formalities, I wished I could get rid of. And may I get rid of sooner than later.
Yeah, and this is great at this point, right? The fact that you can see, the fact that you know this needs to get rid of. और एक बार experiment के तौर पे करके देखो, see how people react, see how everything is fine after 2 or 3 times, even, it becomes totally normal. Right now it seems abnormal, right? Like ऐसा लगता है कहीं से कुछ मिलेगा, right? There's something that is there, so you have to maybe just see कि क्या greed है, क्या मिलने की वो है, और फिर जब वो दिख जाते हैं फिर कहते हैं अरे I don't even need this, right? I never needed this. I didn't even know this is the reason I was doing it. तो ये है कि उसको बुरा ना लग जाए, है
हाँ
ना,
हाँ हाँ
मतलब काइंड, बट अगर किसी की if somebody has this state of mind कि even though I don't want to and they still want me to come and I must go because उनको बुरा ना लग जाए, तो ऐसे को तो बुरा लगे, so that he can also develop a better mind, right? Better respect, so that he can respect his time, he can respect my time. So that is actually a service you're doing to the other, right? Breaking the norm, rocking the boat, because the boat is too old and fragile. It doesn't need to go on any longer. So yeah, like those
yeah. Thank
things
you,
and
Taru,
more.
for
But
that.
if you want, we can definitely, meet one to one and take this more. The
Yeah,
sooner
probably.
it gets dropped, it's better.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Thank you, Shan.
yeah.
Yeah. Aditi, would you like to say this? Do you have the capacity to mute and share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was what Jagan was saying, right? Or you were sharing about the bus driver. Uh, so I always feel like people are projecting their emotions. Like it's not about me in the moment, it's mostly about what they're feeling or what they're projecting on me. So that's why I give them grace and like walk away. It's like, okay, I think you had a fight with your wife or you woke up at the wrong side of the bed. But that's all. Yeah.
I for one know how I will react to the same situation. You know, 24 hours and 50 minutes, I have a very good day. 10 minutes with that bus driver. My friends will say, "Tera muh kyun sada hua hai?"
Yeah.
I know, so at least I know where I am and I know where I have to get to. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So we did it till here. So different parts of the being and the different types of conscious. So one's predominant attitude depends on the part of the being which is dominant in one's nature. Broadly speaking, there are two divisions in the human being: the outer being, which constitutes the personality, from the Latin persona, which means a mask. The first time, I read this, I found it very intriguing that how the word personality comes from persona, which means a mask. So that's a mask that I'm wearing for the outside world. And a lot of times, even for myself, because I'm so used to pretending that I'm even trying to fool myself. And I'm quite successful till I say, "Kya re chal kya raha hai, ho kya raha hai?" It's very interesting. So, this outer being, which constitutes the personality, and the inner being, the true being, or the person who uses the outer mask of the personality. So the inner being, it's said that it uses the outer mask of the personality. So it's hidden behind that. So the outer being is only an instrument as a means of expression. It is not one's real self. However, ordinarily, we are identified with the outer being and regard it as our self. Therefore, it is the outer being that usually expresses itself in our attitudes and actions. So the outer being is an instrument for expression. It's not our real self. However, in our day-to-day lives, usually we are identified because it's so obvious. And that's how we know how to interact with ourselves. I believe that I am the mask that I am wearing, that I identify with the outer being, and therefore it is the outer being that usually expresses itself in our attitude and action. If I'm just behaving based on the triggers that I am receiving, if the weather is good, I'm happy. If people are nice, I'm happy. If somebody is rude, I get angry. If I don't know, the coffee is not good, I get like, aaj ka din hi kharab hai. So if I'm always just depending on, mostly just depending on the outer situation, circumstances, then I am totally, regarding myself as just the outer being. And that's why I think they talk about, being centered, staying within, and then you can see all the outer movement. Yeah, anything before we move on? This is quite, I don't know, seems pretty simple and they'll explain it further. The inner being, the true being. I think one thing to note here. The outer being they are saying is the mask. Inner being is the true being. The person who you can use the mask. The outer being was supposed to be an instrument for expression, but we mistake it to be a real self. And it is the outer being that usually expresses itself in our attitudes and actions. And once we realize that that is the outer and that's not my real being, then I get the capacity to change my attitude. And yeah, is it making sense or is it sounding bit here and there? Okay. Okay, so I just read this and then somebody can read the physical being because it was just, I think, part of it. So the outer being is made up of three parts, each with its own distinct type of consciousness, distinct, distinguishable by its characteristic traits or qualities, which are reflected in the attitudes pertaining to it. A description of these parts of the being is given below using Sri Aurobindo's terminology. So different masters would have spoken about this and they have used different names. So outer being has three parts and it has all parts have the separate, different consciousness, different characteristic qualities which are reflected in the attitude. Yeah, so if there's anything, please unmute and share. Otherwise, whoever is ready can please read the physical being for us. So just to see the three beings, there's a physical being, there's a vital being, and there's a mental being. So these are the three beings that we are talking about. Yeah.
I'll read. The physical being, though people generally attribute consciousness and intelligence only to the mind and look upon the body as something mechanical, the psychology of yoga reveals that the body is endowed with its own characteristic consciousness and intelligence. It is the consciousness in the body which regulates the complex workings of the different bodily organs and psychological systems. Though the mind exhibits a higher form of consciousness and intelligence than that of the body, it cannot but marvel at the wisdom of the body expressed in the various processes which maintain the body in health and heal it in illness or accident. However, physical consciousness, as compared to mental consciousness, is seen to be relatively inert, obscure, narrow, or limited, and automatic or mechanical in its functionings. Thus, attitudes which are characterized by rigidity, narrowness, conservatism, or slowness to change, indifference or boredom, and habitual or routine modes of action and reaction are related to the physical part of our body. So this is in a way like the Sthul Sharir, Sukshma Sharir, and
Yeah, exactly. The stool sharir, the Anmay kosha, na? So
yeah,
yeah, so the thing, the physical being. So it's saying that although we attribute consciousness and intelligence only to the mind, है ना? That's what the first paragraph said, which you missed, which I had shared. We believe it's just the
yeah,
mind that's making the world go round, deciding everything for me and all. So here it says that they look at body as something mechanical, and yet the psychology of yoga reveals that the body is endowed with its own characteristic consciousness and intelligence. The body is intelligent, right? How it heals, I think that is the biggest thing. How it
right.
heals. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. When you see agar burn hota hai, katta hai, how it knows how to coagulate blood, how the skin comes. It's very fascinating.
ये तरु आपने अभी कौन सा
And
शरीर बोला?
Sthul,
Ritu, yeah, stool.
Okay.
yeah,
Means
I noticed that with my fingers, when they were chopped. So it never felt that they will ever grow back again. And it's amazing how it all happened on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, Ritu, Shyam is asking you a question
Yeah.
that can you
well,
talk about?
Sthul, what does it mean that something that doesn't get affected by outward circumstances?
No, like I think soul would mean the physical body, and Suksham would mean the vital body, and Karan would mean the mind. So in Vedic philosophy also, we divide the body in three, like Aurobindo is talking about.
Yeah, Shyam, just the terminology is different. The
Yeah,
text is
yeah,
the same. Yeah, Sthul Shariram, Karan, and Sukshma. Sukshma is lighter than stool. Stool is heavy. Stool means something which is hard, which is thick, which is there, material.
Yeah, we're just
Sukshma
grabbing
is the
on.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just grabbing onto all the life circumstances and events. And Suksham, I know that Suksham is the soul, the light.
Yeah. The subtle is Sukshma.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Karan, right? Karan, the reasoning
That is the
behind.
intelligence for the Buddhi, the
Yeah.
seat of
Yeah.
Buddhi. Or
Exactly. Yeah.
So Taru, one thing here, like this was also given very beautifully and explained very beautifully in Dr. Alok Das' book, Death, Dying and Beyond. So let's say, like, usually we say that the body is just a cloth which we are wearing. So here it's not, it's like that it's more than the cloth, even that has its own consciousness. So how does it connect?
So cloth will be a cloth, right? Even though it could be an intelligent cloth, like आजकल जैसे जो modifications हो रही हैं and all के dry fast, or it could have, electrical units passing through it so that it's a heated blanket, right? Like how the materials is able to. So basically, what it's saying is that it's not you, right? You have a body. You don't. You are not the body. So that's why they are saying that the soul or the psychic being, if we are using this terminology, it just uses the body, right? The body is there so that I can come and experience certain things. The body is mine, but I am not the body. I don't end with the body. So that's why that example of, you how you change clothes, that's how we change bodies, right? It doesn't matter, okay, it's gone bad, now you, or for any other reason, now you just move on. So
Yeah,
here
but if the
it's
body
saying
has
that it's
consciousness,
intelligent. Yeah, sorry, please say.
yeah, so if the body also has its own consciousness, so when the psychic being leaves the body, so it leaves along with all this consciousness also. I mean, everything goes away together. Or I think maybe some consciousness stays and it leaves later. Like few, like when a body dies, I mean, a person dies. So in medical science also, organ transplantation is possible for few hours. So that means for few hours that consciousness is there in that part of that organ.
Yeah, I think you've said it very well that, how there's some things which kind of remain alive for some time. And it is described, although, we don't know how it works, that there are different parts, they go to different elements, right? The physical is burnt or cremated, and yet the physical consciousness, it has, I don't know, it goes to some other place. The vital goes to some other, the psychic has their own thing. So how it disintegrates, how we say there's a जो शरीर है ना, it's made up of 5 components, and when it's say burnt, it goes back into the 5 components. So similarly, अब हम इसकी बात करें कि हाउ इट्स मेड अप ऑफ डिफरेंट कंपोनेंट्स है, वाइटल, मेंटल एंड फिजिकल, सो वो अलग अलग अपने उसमें इट गोज. Yeah. Today I was reading something, just scrolling through something, and somebody had shared that, they had conceived, and about probably 6 months in the pregnancy, they realized that the baby, in the ultrasound, that baby has water retention in the brain, hydrocephalus it's called. And they had shared it on social media. They had asked people to pray for them because according to the doctors, the baby should have been terminated. मतलब इतनी ज्यादा उसके में water retention थी कि they stopped even counting, calculating कि कितना खराब होगा, क्या होगा, कैसे होगा. But the parents were insisting that we don't want to terminate. We don't believe in terminating. So they asked everybody to pray for them and stuff. So today the baby was born, and they actually referred them to a special hospital which would be able to, kind of try to save the baby. And according to them, either the baby would be born dead or he would have 1 or 2 days to live. So they had advised the parent not to go through that trauma, but the parents did not agree. And today the baby was born, and he was normal. Absolutely no trace of any water retention, any hydrocephalus. When he came out, he was crying, like a normal child, and healthy. Everything is healthy. And the doctors are shocked, and they said they don't know how the body healed itself. How the body could remove that extra amount of water that it was retaining, a lot of it, how it's okay, like no explanation. So just talking about the healing aspect, how we are always looking for logics, explanations. This leads to this, and things are beyond logic, and the body knows how to heal. We know, like I know, like, my father shares that when my grandfather was not well, they had like a house which was very far away from their main house. So he would go there for a few days because they said there, he said, I would do chanting and japa, and the body would heal itself. He would refuse all medicines. He'll say that the body knows. And I think that's what we are reading in the Integral Health book too, right? That we are reading on Sundays, that book study. that the body is absolutely fully capable of healing itself. And I had read another book again, and it said that, the biggest pharmaceutical industry itself is in the body. It knows which drugs to produce and how. Why? But because हम उसको मौका नहीं देते since childhood. Because whenever something happens, before the natural mechanism can kick in, we give crocin, we give anti-allergies, we give, supplements, this. So फिर it says कि ठीक है, फिर it doesn't get any exercise, right? It doesn't get developed. And at our stages, if we realize, then again we have to let things happen so that they can develop, they can kick the system, we can kickstart the system back. But it takes faith, devotion, persistence, patience, and that I don't want to do that anymore. So that we have that capacity, that capability. The body knows, but we think we know better, the mind, and we don't let it. So the physical, though people generally attribute consciousness and intelligence only to the mind and look upon the body as something mechanical, the psychology of yoga reveals that the body is endowed with its own characteristic consciousness and intelligence. It is the consciousness in the body which regulates the complex workings of different bodily organs and physiological systems. So the consciousness in the body regulates. What is the power? The consciousness, it's saying, of the body that regulates the complex workings. And boy, it's complex. When we read biology, physiology, and all in school, it was pretty big, right? What secretes where, what induces what. So which regulates the complex workings of the different bodily organs and physiological systems. Though the mind exhibits a higher form of consciousness and intelligence than that of the body, it cannot but marvel at the wisdom of the body expressed in the various processes which maintain the body in health and heal it in illness or accident. Yeah. So although the mind's intelligence is more visible, it's a higher form, and yet even the mind is marvels at the wisdom of the body expressed in various processes. And we're just talking about humans, right? But see how, say, in lizards, how it can let go of the tail and grow another tail. And there are different animals which have different amazing functions, their bodies, the chameleon, how it camouflages, the turtle, how it takes the head in. I mean, nature has its own intelligence for sure, and the different body parts. So, however, physical consciousness as compared to mental consciousness is seen to be relatively inert, obscure, narrow, or limited, and automatic or mechanical in its functioning. It appears, right, that it's very mechanical in its functioning, and it is there, and thus attitudes which are characterized by rigidity, narrowness, conservatism, or slowness to change, indifference or boredom, and habitual or routine modes of action and reaction are related to the physical part of the being. How we were talking about that we have come from stones. So that jadta aspect, that materialistic, that stool aspect, because it's relatively, there's inertness, there is that inconscient, which very, some darkness and heaviness, not much space. So these are the attitudes which characterize the body, saying that it's intelligent and it has consciousness, and yet because it has these, so it's characterized by rigidity, narrowness, conservatism, slowness to change, indifference or boredom, and habitual or routine modes of action. Okay, you know how we were talking about the neural pathways are related to the physical part of our being. So this five, where did it come? Here, so personality, outer mask, it said, I didn't read it. In the Sankhya school of Indian philosophy, the outer and the inner divisions of the beings are called Prakriti, which is the nature, and Purusha, which is the person, respectively. We know that, right? Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is the nature, the energy, and Purusha is the person, the witness, we also call it. So that's the Sankhya school of Indian philosophy. So that was about the mask. But any comments, any reactions on what we just read about the physical body, or it's all good?
Yeah, there was no reaction as such. I would only say that I need to move from the Charvak school of Indian philosophy to that Sankhya school of Indian philosophy.
Good. Yeah. Yes, Sagar.
Ma'am, so one second. So, when you said that the body has the capability of producing all kinds of medicines that we find in all major pharmacies. So, is it a body that is already trained to do that? Because why I'm asking this is in the news, I see that sometimes, हट्टा कट्टा आदमी है छोटे से मलेरिया से क्योंकि उसके पास पैसे नहीं थे वो चल बसा. He expired because of it. There are so many examples, not just old people, but who are, extremely strong physically, mentally, but they somehow, they couldn't buy the medicines and still, in the process of recovering, they cannot take it. So why does that happen? Uh,
Yeah. So Jagan, see how we were talking na, कि we don't give it a chance to develop. है ना, बचपन से जो इम्यूनिटी थी, द वे द सिस्टम वाज सपोज्ड टू वर्क, वी डिडंट लेट इट वर्क. We kept giving one medicine over the other, right? And especially nowadays, with kids, we don't want anything. We just want to suppress, 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 right? So the natural immunity becomes very less. Ab agar samajh lo, you're talking about a 20-year-old who died because of malaria, for example. So for the 20 years of his life, if the body has not been given the option to develop its working, right? धीरे 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 develop होती है ना strength भी. अगर समझ लो, अब जैसे fever है, right? Why does fever happen? You know how it says that because when the body temperature rises, the body's white, the WBCs, white blood cells, they become more capable of fighting the attacking organism. तो इसलिए वो बॉडी का राइज कर देते हैं कि उनके में ज्यादा पावर आ जाए और वो उसको मार सके और इन्फेक्शन को हरा सके. बट जैसे ही फीवर होता है हम सीधा क्रोसिन खिला देते हैं, डोलो खिला देते हैं, है ना, टाइलेनॉल खिला देते हैं. तो फिर अगर हर बार जब मैंने 10 बार फीवर हुआ है, 10 के 10 बार आई हैव गिवन द चाइल्ड टाइलेनॉल और क्रोसिन एंड आई हैव नॉट लेट इट फाइट, देन उसकी फिर फाइटिंग कैपेसिटी वीक हो जाएगी ना. इट्स नॉट यूज टू फाइटिंग. So just that, because our lifestyles are such, our beliefs are such, that we have not given ourselves, most of us, and yet there are some who don't, and their body manages fine. So it's just our fault. But it's miracle ऐसे नहीं हो जाएगा, है ना, कि कभी करा ही नहीं. हो सकता है अगर faith और devotion हो उसमें भी. But अगर there's something that we have to experiment with, it has to be built slowly, right? The body has to be given again the capacity to heal itself, और उसमें time लगता है थोड़ा सा for it to redevelop. Yeah.
So, ma'am, for any, like, let's say up until my 18 years of age, what I eat, जो मैं खा रहा हूँ, जो मुझे पीना है, जब मेडिसिन लेने, कब चेकअप पे जाना, ये सब मेरे पेरेंट्स डिसाइड करते थे, ठीक है। तो my immunity was sort of in their control because I would listen to them because they are my parents. तो अगर लाइक मुझे ये क्वेश्चन ये है कि अगर मैं अभी चाहूँ कि मुझे ऐसा इम्यूनिटी चाहिए जहाँ पे मैं अपने आप को हील कर पाऊँ, ना कि एक्सटर्नल मेडिसिन की मतलब मदद लूँ, तो अभी भी हो सकता है कि इट्स आई एम टू फार, I've come too far.
नहीं, आई थिंक किसी भी स्टेट पे हो सकता है, बट एक उसके लिए थोड़ा सा एक कनेक्शन चाहिए, है ना, अपनी बॉडी के साथ में माइंडफुलनेस चाहिए कि क्या हो रहा है, व्हाट लीड्स टू व्हाट, किस चीज से हो रहा होगा, वी नीड टू कनेक्ट विद इन and see what's happening and stuff and become more intelligent and then give the body more opportunities. They are lovely books. एक तो बहुत simple सी थी. I'm not carrying it, otherwise I would have given it to you, but I'll try to recall the name and the author. You will like it if this is something of interest to you. I'll share it in the group. It was very good.
Yeah, that was actually my follow-up question. You already answered. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most welcome. So yeah, I mean, we are capable of miracles, and the fact, how complex the body is and how healthy we are for as long as we are, how the system is working more than it's not working, much, 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 much more. That's pretty amazing.
But Tarun, in some cases, I think we do need medical help also. Like, let's say if we have extremely high blood pressure and if we don't take medicine at that time, so it can be very harmful. So, when can one decide what one needs? Because let's say the corona was there, and even young kids who were few months old passed away. Some of the people couldn't even reach the hospital. So, why didn't the body at that time heal on its own when it knew that, okay, I will not be able to get mental health? And sometimes people didn't even know that they were suffering from this, but they were because they didn't get themselves tested or checked.
Yeah.
Maybe, balance between both is needed.
Actually, it sounds better, right? Ritu, this way के balance चाहिए, but and मतलब in the sense, it depends on कि कितने I would say again, yeah, sorry, I'm just going back and forth. Firstly, your question about, why did the body not heal itself is again what I just shared with Jagan, है ना? Because we are not used to it. We cannot just live very superficial lives and then say that जब जरूरत थी तो कहीं से वो पावर आके हील कर सकती थी, हो सकता है किसी को करा भी हो, बट मोस्ट केसेस में तो वो पावर की कोई रिकॉग्निशन भी नहीं होती, राइट? लाइक वी डोंट हैव दैट बिलीव दैट दैट वुड हैपन. बीपी वगैरह जैसे आप बात कर रहे हो ना, उसके केसेस में भी आई थिंक अगेन इट डिपेंड्स ऑन where one is, right? If one is able to maybe have that control over different parts, have that consciousness, and one could not know that one is suffering, and now one knows because BP is high, one I'm sure can regulate it. But if I'm not connected at any level, and just because now I know that, okay, I have something this, and now I should be able to, just because I mentally understand, it's not a mental thing, it's a body consciousness. I think that aspect is very, very important यहाँ पे. तो टेक्निकली बैलेंस नहीं चाहिए, पूरी कैपेसिटी है, दैट्स व्हाट द टेक्स्ट से. बट मेरे को ये भी देखना है कि मैं कहाँ हूँ, है ना? Just because I've read the text, they don't become me. So what do I practice? Where am I? What is my faith? What is my surrender, what is my devotion, that also would this lead me to where I need to give. I don't know if you know, but there are surgeries also that take place at the subtle level. There are doctors who actually do subtle surgeries, that they would come, they would operate, nothing would be touched on a physical level, and the person would be healed. But before they do those surgeries, you have, a full conversation with them, you have a full interview. They first have to make sure that you believe in it fully for them to be doing that. Because a lot is happening, but we don't belong to that world. So, we say it's not happening or it's not a possibility. And yet, these are real things that I know people have done.
Yeah, Taru, I have a question. That surgery at the subtle level about which you were talking of, it is something like a कोई PLRT therapy type है क्या? Past life regression
No,
therapy
no,
type.
no, no, no. It's an actual surgery, Sham, and I have heard that even they give you the pieces that they have taken out.
The scalpel or if
Okay.
a cutting, all that happens in that.
That's what, you know what, I will look up. There was an official term for it. I'll look it up and I'll send it to you if you're interested. But I do know that this is happening in our world.
Okay.
Successfully happening. I'll send you the information.
Yeah, it is very intriguing. Thank you.
And if I forget,
Definitely.
just remind me. Sometimes I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
things and I
certainly.
forget. Yeah.
Ma'am, if you can share that with me also, please. Thank you.
I'll share it on the group then for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good
So
to
that everyone
know.
can benefit.
Yeah, or I don't
Uh,
know if we'll benefit, but for us, it's just, curiosity that is being
Yeah,
satisfied.
certainly.
Yeah. Yes, Jagan.
yeah, no, actually, I had a follow-up question after Ritu ma'am about, what about broken bones? And I thought I'll just Google it. And I see that uh, it says, eventually the threads of the new bone tissue meet in the middle and knit together. So body has the capacity even to reform a broken bone. I was not aware of this before. Yeah.
नहीं, वो तो खुद ही करती है ना, हम तो स्टेबलाइज करते हैं, right? That's what we are doing when we are stabilizing the part in the cast. We are giving the body the opportunity to regrow, na? The bone the opportunity to regrow. That's the mechanism. कास्ट के अंदर जब
Hmm.
स्टेबल कर दिया उस पार्ट को, and then the bone heals, it grows. Yeah.
मुझे लगा we provide calcium and protein from an
Okay.
external source, and
Okay.
that
Okay.
kind of helps it. मुझे I didn't
अच्छा
know
अच्छा.
that it can
Yeah.
do it
No,
by itself.
fully. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
I'm
So I was
reminded. Sorry, Ritu.
somewhere that the animals, even they would be having this power to heal on their own, and they also know what to eat and what not to eat when they're unwell. So one of my cousin told me that the monkeys they eat a certain kind of a flower. We call it sadabahar in Hindi, and that's when they have high BP. So they know. Monkeys also would be very similar to humans. Maybe they even have high BP. So, but they know how to cure it. So, so I think
Yeah.
it's quite interesting that how we don't know.
Yeah. Ritu, it's a world of fascination. Even the other day there was some talk I was listening to, in that they said that pregnant elephants, they
Hmm.
know how, just before they go into labor, there's a specific plant that they eat, or a specific flower which helps in smooth labor, whatever. So all
Hmm.
the pregnant elephants who are living in the wild would go and eat that plant before they would go and get into labors. Like, it's unbelievable that how they would move. So nature has its own intelligence, the body has its own intelligence.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I was sharing that what I'm reminded of is, mother says that once, there was this thing that a aircraft, it was a possibility that it would crash. But something happened and the airplane landed fine without crashing. The pilots were able to pull through a miracle. And everybody was so joyous that, a miracle has happened. And that's when, Mother had commented that millions of miracles are happening every day. Every flight, say in an airport, if there are 1,500 flight that lands, all those 1,500 flights could have crashed, but they landed, right? So that I don't call as a miracle. My body, it's functioning well right now. I don't call it a miracle. But if something was to happen to it and if I cure it without drugs, say for example, that I call a miracle. So she said that is my limited sight, right? That I cannot recognize the number of miracles happening every day. And I'm looking for those one or two petty things for my faith, for my devotion, for my, oh wow, this also happens kind of a thing. But if I start recognizing, especially I think after Corona, every breath that one is able to take effortlessly is something to be grateful for. It is बोलने में ऐसे लगता है it's just a word play, right? How can I be grateful for every word? फिर मैं और करूँगा क्या? Grateful ही रहता रहूँगा क्या? And yet it's the way that one lives, right? An approach towards life कि इतनी gratefulness है कि discontent की जगह ही नहीं. Yes, Shyam, please.
Yeah, Taru, when we imagine that many asthmatic people, they would have even many problems in taking even a single spell of breath. So certainly we are able to be grateful.
And ये तो fact है ना, but हम बार बार भूल जाते हैं, right? It's a fact कि it is something to be grateful for.
And yet we are what you call what you often tell that we are like a dog's tail कि उस पे कितना भी घी मल दो वो सीधी नहीं होती है.
घी नहीं मल दो, प्रेशर लगाओ. घी मलने से कैसे सीधी हो जाएगी?
What do you call?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
कई बार
Shyam
तो
is
ये लग
missing घर का खाना with ghee on top of it. That's why he
या
gave me
रोटी में घी लगा
example.
के
Yeah,
आलू बीन का सब्जी and all that.
good one. Yeah.
कैप्सिकम का सब्जी, it's my favorite.
Okay. Okay.
कई
Where
बार
do you
ये
live, Shyam?
बैंगलोर येलहन का कई बार ये लगता है कि कभी कभी ये लगता है कि हाउ डू आई कट दिस डॉग्स टेल.
Actually,
And
कट
people,
नहीं करनी है, सीधी करनी है, हो जाएगी. Just at it, right? Like जितना दिखता रहेगा, होती रहेगी. And if one is feeling helpless, one can pray. That really helps. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I don't know if one believes in it, but yeah.
Yeah, we talk so much about a dog's tail, and we don't even know maybe the dog wants to connect, but we are just trying to सीधी कर दो. Maybe it finds it beautiful to be like that.
Yeah. हाँ, हम तो अपने एग्जाम्पल के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ले रहे हैं ना. डॉग में भी यू आर एब्सोल्युटली राइट.
एक capacity होती है सीधी करने की, because when they are so scared, frightened, at that time they can turn their tail in the other direction.
And so can we. But the thing is that as soon as they get back to normal, it gets है ना टेढ़ा again. So I think that's what it refers to probably also कि permanently सीधी नहीं होती.
yeah, it have a self-regulating mechanism कि
Yeah.
कुछ पल के लिए अगर सीधा हो भी गया then within the very next momentarily next moment में वो फिर वापस अपने पुराने पोजीशन पे आ जाती है.
Yeah.
और
So
फिर काफी मुश्किल
that's just what is referred to है ना जब हम अपने patterns की बात करते हैं, habits की बात
और
करते हैं.
काफी मुश्किलात भी होता है उसको देख के.
बट वो मुश्किलात ना बहुत जरूरी है श्याम, बिकॉज उसके बिना ना हमको रियलाइज भी नहीं होगा कि ये प्रॉब्लम है और मुझे इसको चेंज करना है ना. मतलब दैट इज ऑल्सो द नेचर्स जेनरस लविंग वे. I remember that one of my friends was going through a very, very hard time, years and years and years and years. One day she said, and I thought that she's probably in a bad, feeling low and stuff. But she said that sometimes, I wonder that somebody up there loves me so much कि जब तक मैं सीधी नहीं होंगी it's not stopping. है ना, मतलब see the amount of time and energy I've been given, that one blow after the other, one blow after the other. Like how much generous is the cosmos that it's making sure that I change my ways, that I don't fall back. This is see another way of looking at things ना, कि कोई कितना प्यार करता है मुझसे कि मेरे को सिखा के ही छोड़ेगा.
I think diseases also have this role that we change our habits and our patterns, and we don't think too much about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Pick up calls जिसको बोलते हैं.
And we don't get touchy about all these little and menial things and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much to learn, so much to discern, so much to unlearn.
But पता है, because मेरे से तो होता नहीं है, you know, there's some divine grace, there's some higher power that makes it. So don't take it on you so much. Like you don't have to feel overwhelmed. If you feel it's overwhelming, offer it, right? Say I'm not able to do it and I want to do it, and you do it for me. Then वो थोड़ा I पे भी जब हम बहुत ज्यादा ले लेते हैं ना, then somewhere we stop. We see कि ये तो impossible है, right? ये तो दिख ही नहीं रहा है कि कैसे होगा, right? So we at times, you know, then I don't know, the progress stops there, kind.
Yeah, and then the prayer thing can help when the eye becomes so overwhelming, and then when it starts weighing down heavily on you, like it in Gandhiji's talisman, it had said, no, then you can obviously pray to people and think about people who are even in the lowest of the lows, far lower than where you are standing. So at those points, all these things help.
Or just simply offering it to whatever higher
Yeah.
power that you believe in. Okay, I'm struggling with this. I don't know my way out. Or, you know, I want to now be out of it. I'm tired. जो देखना था, I hope मैंने देख लिया है. जो सीखना था, मैं सीख चुका हूँ. अब मुझे अगली चीज दिखाओ. You know, like take me from here and you will be guided. For sure, there's no if and but about it. Yeah.
So it means not too much of I is also not necessary. We can also sometimes say we.
I'm saying nothingness. No I, no we, nothing. Yeah.
Sure. Ma'am, I unmuted because in the beginning you were talking about how anger comes and how we question the truth in anger. So that give like brought this question. What so if I give a scenario that let's say uh, let's say a father, he's telling his son to sleep at 9 o'clock every day, or his daughter, anyone, and they are not sleeping. One day they're not sleeping, 2 days, 1 week they're not sleeping. So he's concerned because they have to sleep, they need to get that amount of sleep. So on the eighth day he shouts at them, क्यों नहीं सो रहे हो, 9 बज गए, क्यों नहीं सो रहे हो? So there is truth in his anger, no? Then so so even that is also wrong, or he needs to channel it in some other way.
See, Jagan, first of all, we all do everything with our limited understanding, right? If the child actually wasn't getting enough rest, he will sleep. The body will sleep. It will be tired, right? एक तो ये है, but मुझे लगता है कि नहीं ऐसे ही करना है. Because somewhere when we become parents, we feel that अब तो हम भगवान हैं. है ना, थोड़ा एक उबला एस्पेक्ट भी होता है कि आई नो वाला. आई थिंक वो एक अलग एजेंडा हो गया है. और दूसरा, देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन एक्सप्रेसिंग एंगर and becoming angry. So if my child, again, who doesn't want to sleep till 12:30 these days, if I'm shouting at him at 12:30 कि अब उठा या अब आंखें खुली हुई दिख रही तो ऐसी डांट पिटेगी, I am not angry. I am at peace, but I am expressing anger. Do you see the difference? एक्सप्रेशन है कि मुझे उसको बोलना है कि अब तू बस कर, बहुत हो गया, राइट? बट मेरा बीइंग इज फाइन, राइट? जैसे एक एक्टर एक्टिंग कर रहा है अपने रोल के लिए, हर बारी हम गुस्सा, एक्टर पूरा गुस्सा थोड़ा हो जाता है, जैसे ही डायरेक्टर कट बोलता है, ही इज नॉर्मल, राइट? तो एक्सप्रेशन इज डिफरेंट, एंगर इज डिफरेंट, इन रोल्स में ऐसी चीजों में तो एक्सप्रेस करना पड़ता है, that's fine.
Yeah, Taru, what you were saying is that I can show my anger, but I don't ride on the anger wave.
Yeah, I'm not angry when most
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
time when, yeah, exactly, yeah.
yeah. In my heart, mind, and body, I'm not angry, although I'm showing it outwardly to the
Yeah,
person
yeah,
so that it could bring something better in him or
yeah,
her.
yeah. और अगर मैं
So it's not
हो भी रहा
affecting.
हूँ इफेक्ट, अगर हो भी रहा हूँ, तो फिर
तो
इसमें
बहुत
कोई
ही
अच्छा बुरा का बात नहीं है, प्रॉब्ली देन आई डोंट नो हाउ टू मैनेज इट, है ना, आई कैन डू
yeah.
बेटर अगेन। बिकॉज इस
Thank you.
सिचुएशन में ऐसे में मैं गुस्सा होके करूंगा क्या, राइट? लाइक,
Mhm.
या,
Where will it lead me to? क्या होगा?
या, एग्जैक्टली। Yeah, so I think we'll end the session here. We have finished the small text on, the physical body, and I'm very excited about this. कि अभी आगे क्या क्या होगा, because this is quite revelatory and it's nice to read it systematically, right? Rather than one thing from here, one thing from there. This kind of gives a whole structure. I'm happy about it. So we'll end here, and just before ending, just thanking Grace and you know this, for this possibility, for this mind, this opportunity to have this reflection on the words of grace, and coming out of my smallness, praying for everybody's, light, everybody's peace, everybody's wellness. May all beings be truly well and truly happy, and realize, what they have come here for. Thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely session, Taru. Thanks.
Yeah.